Well, welcome out there once again to my program. Always a pleasure to be here. Just getting settled in, you might say. Microphone is on. Everything is working properly. I have Steve Reese is in the booth. He's got me all hooked up here. So we'll get started. I don't have a guest. I don't know what happened. I had a group coming on. We're going to talk about Durfee High School. They're the group that is opposing. They're urging people to vote no. So, but they're not here. I don't know what happened. Anyway, I've got a lot to talk about, and I'm going to start off with kind of a reminder that at the end of the month, March 24th. It's March, not the end of this month, I should say, and that's at 7 p.m. That's a Saturday night. The Diamond Education Foundation is sponsoring a clam boil, and that's at the South Seekonk Rod and Gun Club. The doors are going to open at 5:30 p.m. and apparently the meal will start at 7. So. If you've ever been there, if you've never been there, I should say, it's quite an event. They have these real long tables, and people sit on each side of these tables. The food is served in trays. You don't get an individual plate like a clam boil meal, but they come out with trays of sausages and potatoes and onions and clams, of course. You have the hot dogs, etc. And you get plenty, really plenty. If you walk out of there and you're hungry, you haven't been inside the place that long. So that's going to be, tickets are $30. It's a fundraiser. It's for the Diamond Education Foundation. The Diamond Education Foundation, of which I'm a member or director. It raises money for Diamond for special projects. So outside, it's money that's raised and it's used. You might say it's not part of the school's budget. The school has it has a budget, but this is money that we raise. And then if there's a special project at the school, the board will discuss it and decide by vote if they'll fund the project. Sometimes maybe just a portion of it. So that's what the money is used. It's used for Diamond Vocational High School. Very worthwhile organization, the foundation, and of course, let's face it, the school has produced a lot of graduates that have done very well, and most graduates of Diamond do well. It's a school where you're going to come out of there with a high school diploma. At one time, high school diploma was the end of the world, and now not so much. However, graduating from Diamond, as you I'm sure are aware, a student is going to have a vocation, whether it's carpentry, plumbing, electrical, culinary arts. They have something, and a lot of them before they graduate are in these co-op programs. Basically, they're working. They're going to school, and some of the time that they have, they're on a job too, in their field. So it's really a good school. The next thing I want to mention is legal tip of the week. Now this is pretty important. Anyone who owns a home has a deed. What is a deed? Well, a deed is proof that you own the home, you own the house, you own the property. It gives a description of the property. Not the buildings necessarily, but the land, how big the land is, whether there's any easements on the land, things of that nature. So that is an important piece of paper, document, and by necessity, they should be recorded at the Registry of Deeds. Now, you don't have to record the deed, but it's advisable to record a deed. So if you buy a piece of property, let's say you buy a piece of land, there's no house on it, and you're given a deed by the grantor. That's the owner of the property. You get the deed from the grantor. You are the purchaser of the property. You are the grantee. Now, the reason to record is because, well, let's say the grantor found another person and convinced them to buy the same piece of land. Now the buyer would want to search the title to see if, to see what the title has to say. If there's any mortgages on it, any liens, any easements. And they find that, well, because the first buyer never recorded the deed, they don't come across the fact that someone's already bought that piece of land. So they could actually buy the land and record the deed, and then you have this major legal problem. And the first buyer might be out of luck for not recording the deed. So that's a significant reason why you want to record the deed. Now, I'm going to read a little here about when a deed is drawn up, which means when it's made. And this is from a recent case that I read. I'm going to read this paragraph, and it says, quote, "It is a rule in construction of deeds that the language, being the language of the grantor, that's the owner of the property, is to be construed most strongly against him." So when a deed is drawn, if the grantor makes a mistake, well, as I just read, it's going to be construed against the grantor. You have to be very cautious as a grantor. It's good to get legal advice. Make sure that that deed is written up in a very, very proper legal way. And that's a case that is referenced here. It's called Bernard versus Nantucket Boys Club. It's a 1984 case. And also it quotes from another case called Thayer versus Payne. And actually that case is an 1848 case, so that gives you an idea how far back this sort of a rule in the construction of deeds has been in existence. And further, it says that the interpretive canon is useful when questions arise, quote, "from the ambiguity, brevity, or uncertainty of the descriptive words used." And that case is, they cite Atkins versus Boardman, and that's another very old case, 1841. So to alleviate problems, you want to make sure that the deed, as the buyer too, mostly, that the deed is drawn up properly. You get those, proper words. If there's an easement, where it belongs. If there's none, make sure there's nothing in the deed. You don't want someone to knock on your door one day and say that, well, they've got a right of way over your property, and you say, well, I checked the deed, it doesn't say that. Well, your deed has been written wrong. The prior deed says that there is an easement. I have the prior deed. Whoever drew your deed and gave it to you made a big mistake. You don't want that to happen. That's the reason for a title search, and of course that's also the reason to check how the deed is drawn. And it goes on to say the underlying rationale is that the grantor, quote, "selects the terms and it is supposed that he will insert all that has been agreed upon beneficial to him, and we less careful to state fully all which is beneficial to the grantee. And there's another old case they cite, which is Johnson v. Jordan, and that's a 1841 case. So I hope that's given you some information in regards to deeds, and that's the tip of the week. I'm going into it a little more fully because I don't have a guest, but that's gives me this opportunity to give you a little more information. Okay. The other thing I want to mention is that the South End Neighborhood Association, of which I attend most regularly, is going to hold their next meeting on March 1st. And that's a Thursday. They always have their meetings the first Thursday of the month. And it's held at the old St. Patrick's Church, which is now the Good Shepherd Church on South Main and the south end of the city of Fall River. Now the meetings start at 6:30, and usually they're over by 7:30. They try to keep the meetings to an hour so that people will know around 7:30 it'll conclude, they can get home and do what they want. Watch TV, have supper, or go somewhere else. The weather's going to be getting better as the months go by, so 7:30 at night is not late in the summer and still light. There'll be a couple of presentations, and I always film those meetings, and I give the film to Bristol Community College, and they air it on channel 95. That's cable TV. So if you have cable TV, you can always turn on channel 95 and watch the film of the meeting. And the college will run it a couple of times at least, sometimes more, I guess, depending on the topic. So that's on channel 95, and you can find out when it'll air by looking at the Herald News. On page 3 of the Herald News has always prints the schedule of the day's broadcast in regards to Bristol Community College. So you can look at the schedule. It's usually a 3 or 4 inch column, and it'll have all the times and the programs that'll be shown that day. So that's in the paper every single day. So what you see one day it won't apply to the next day, obviously, but there will be a new schedule the following day. So that, and that usually has a lot of channel 95. You have to have cable. If you don't have cable, if you have a computer, or you have a friend that has a computer, you can get into the website of Bristol Community College and, sit in your home anytime you want and watch the program. And with the technology today, I'm pretty sure you're able to download the film, make yourself your own DVD. You might want to watch it again because the programs are not kept forever on a BCC website, so you might want to download it if it's something very important, or it might be something personal, or you might have been on my program and you want a DVD. Also, with the website and use of a computer, if you have someone in Florida, California, they can go into the website and watch. So you can let them know, grandma in Minnesota, those cold nights, she can get into the website and watch the program. So anyway, come Thursday, March 1st, 6:30, we'll be at the South End. And there'll be a couple of major presentations. Now, I know there's going to be one by Mr. Kafori. Mr. Kafori is in the process of purchasing the King Philip Mill. He's a developer. He's had, developments. He did the development of the old Henry Lord School. He had that torn down, and he built some houses there. Now, he's the winning bidder. There was an open bid in regards to the King Philip Mill. There was one some time ago which wasn't successful, but this one here has proven so far successful. Mr. Kafori will eventually own the property. I think that'll take place shortly. This is the end of February almost. He should, if everything goes right, he should, according to plan, he should be the owner of the property maybe at the end of March. I'm not sure, but it'll be it should be soon. Now, once Mr. Kafori becomes the owner of the property, of course, he's responsible for the property, just like anyone else who buys a piece of property. He'll be required to pay taxes, which I'm sure the city will be very happy about, because the city hasn't collected taxes on that property for 4 or 5 years or more. The taxes ran up to about $560,000 back taxes. The prior owner left the country, and the mill has been sitting there, and he left the country with a huge tax owed to the city of Fall River. And since the city has owned it, of course, they don't tax themselves on their own buildings, so they weren't able to collect any taxes. So Mr. Kafori will become the owner soon, hopefully, and should. He'll be liable for the taxes and security. There's a fence around the property now. I was told by Mr. Kafori that once he becomes the owner, the fence will remain up, and there will be, maybe some additional security. I'm not sure, but eventually he will get the property cleaned up. Now, when I say cleaned up, it means any asbestos, hazardous waste, anything that's found to be, a health risk, anything that's contaminated, that'll be cleaned up. That has to be done before the demolition of the building. Now, he plans to demolish the two buildings that at the corner of Kilburn and Dwelly. There's a couple of major buildings there, and he plans to demolish those two buildings. Now, he'll be demolishing, as I was told, the inner building first. That's the one that is closest to Cook Pond. That building will be demolished first, and then he'll be able to get heavy equipment to demolish the second building, which is a huge, big building. It's about 4 stories high, and it's almost a city block long. So you'll be able to get heavy equipment in there to demolish that building. Now, once the buildings are demolished, they'll have to put some utilities in there. You need water, electric, sewer, etc. And then he plans to build, as he mentioned, 26 single-family, what they call market-rate homes. So that's his plan, 26. And the price will be from $265 to $285. So anyone interested, I guess you could contact Mr. Kafori as soon as possible and take a look at his plan and maybe pick out a site where you would like to have a house built. Of course, you're going to have most houses there, I'm sure, going to have water view right next to Cook Pond. And well, that'll be sitting there in your living room, watching that sun come up over the pond is going to be a terrific experience. So that he's going to be there. He was on my program a few weeks ago, and he mentioned that he will be at the March 1st neighborhood meeting. He was at the prior meeting in February, but he wants to come back and give an update, so it'll be interesting to listen to see what progress Mr. Kafari has made. So that takes care of that pretty much. If you have any questions, Mr. Kafari said you can call him. So if if you're interested in more information, give him a call. And if you want, he'll be at the meeting March 1st, 6:30. You can talk to him there. So that's going to be a main thing on the agenda. And the other thing will be the group that was supposed to be here tonight. They haven't showed up. They're supposed to be at the March 1st meeting. Now, they requested time, and I know that because at the last meeting, that's when they made the request publicly. And they were granted time at the March 1st meeting, and they want to basically talk about Durfee High School, and they have indicated that people should vote no on a new Durfee High School to be located at the same site as the old Durfee High School. And they have, they think it should be centrally located. That's what I told anyway. And they're concerned about the amount, the price. Now, the figures that were in the paper, I'll get the paper right here. Basically, the MSBA, that's the Massachusetts School Building Authority, will be paying, according to the figures in the paper, $165 million, which is 62.6% of the total cost. The total cost estimated is at $265.5 million. That's 265.5. And that's gone up substantially over the last year and a half, 2 years, at least $100 million, it seems. So they believe that that is too high, that a new school is not needed, that the old school could be apparently rehabilitated, refurbished, maybe modernized. I guess really that's the word, because it lacks some modern conveniences, I should say safety things, like fire, suppressant controls, easy access from the building, a number of other things that I'm not that knowledgeable about, but these are the things that would have to be done. Also, there will be a 30-year bond on a city's payment. So the city will bond for its share. It feels that its share is based on what the paper says here, $58.5 million. But let me get the article. I don't want to make a mistake here. I'll read from the article. This appeared in the Herald News, and it says the building authority, that's the Massachusetts School Building Authority, has agreed to pay $165 million, representing 62.6% of the total. That's what I just read, and the total is $263 million 55.5. The city administration, or the city, the taxpayers, they will need to pay $40 million from the regular tax levy, with a $58.5 million to be raised through a debt exclusion, and that has to be approved at a March 6th special election. So be aware that there's going to be a vote. That's a Tuesday on March 6th, whether you want the city to go forward with a new school, which would be a yes vote, and if you don't want the city to go forward with a new school, that would be a no vote. So you'll have the ballot, and I'm sure you're going to have an explanation on the ballot, and then you decide whether to vote yes or no. Now, it goes on to say here, the last paragraph, taking into account the interest over the life of the 30-year bond, the city's taxpayers within the regular tax levy and the debt exclusion would actually pay around $181 million. So there's this part here that has been brought out by the people who feel that a no vote should be made. You could probably, they had an article in the paper, you might want to contact one of them or some of them and get their explanation, or better still, show up at the March 1st meeting of the South End Neighborhood Association, because they said they're going to be there, they said they're going to make a presentation, and you'll have ample opportunity to ask them questions during the presentation, maybe before, or even after, and you'll get their view of what they feel is the true nature of this whole project. So, I think that, okay, in their group, here's the name of their group. This is the group that'll be there on March 1st. They call themselves, quote, People for a Better Way. So they'll be there, and you'll be able to talk to them and find out what exactly is going on as far as their proposal. And the other thing is, I know they've said a number of times, they don't like the location. They feel that the school should be centrally located. I don't know, I was hoping they would be here to find out where are they thinking of with so-called central location, and whether that location would require demolition. I mean, if there's not enough land and they have to take buildings by eminent domain, those buildings will have to be demolished to allow the school to be built, of course, and maybe, of course, for parking. And nowadays, you have these athletic fields. It's not like the old day when Coach Luke Urban had the basketball teams from Durfee go to Boston Garden almost annually, and those teams, the Durfee teams, practice at the Armory. Well, we know the Armory is closed because it's in bad repair. But he was able to take teams to Boston on an annual basis from Durfee, which was something almost unheard of. Well, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.